Look across the country. Survey the political leaders that come to mind, women and men. Who are the statesmen? Who are the ones grounded in their convictions and principles who garner respect from both sides? Not for their political savvy, but for their kindness. Not for their skill at energizing crowds or raising millions of dollars in minutes, but for their wisdom and humility. Today we'll talk to someone who fits the bill, a statesman, a peacemaker, a wise and gentle leader, and we'll do it with a guest who saw it all up close, his son. Stay with us. His obituary opened like this: Richard Thornburgh, an effective and respected two-term governor of Pennsylvania who later served a tumultuous 3-year stint as U.S. Attorney General under Presidents Reagan and Bush, has died at age 88. In fact, Dick Thornburgh was so respected and admired that even outside of political life, he was called on to lead investigations into ethics violations and widespread corruption. A kind of Elliot Ness, Jimmy Stewart, and Walter Cronkite, all in one, the ultimate straight shooter. Despite all of his accomplishments, one phrase might be the most fitting epitaph to his storied life, one that welcomed every visitor to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and greeted motorists whenever a car from PA was passing by. You've got a friend in Pennsylvania. But underneath the friendly state slogan and the winning smile, there was steel, convictions about God and our responsibility to care for the most vulnerable. To help tell his story is his son, professor and good government advocate, David Thornburgh. David, welcome to State of Independence.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to be with you.
It's great to be. Now I've known you for over 30 years, and it's hard to believe. I think we're both too young to have known each other that long.
I'm only 32.
Yeah, that's right.
So.
I've known you since you were a baby. But you've got your own incredible career as a statesman. I mean, you've led the Economy League, as I recall. You were the executive director of the Fels Institute at the University of Pennsylvania, and then now you're the president and CEO of the Committee of 70. And so you're really right in the thick of it as a statesman.
Well, I've been fortunate, and I've had a great example to follow. But I've tried to pick my spots somewhere between public and private sectors, and I fancy myself as a civic entrepreneur, someone who sees problems as opportunities and tries to construct solutions to those problems. And right now, as the president and CEO of the Committee of 70, our challenge is to restore the kind of democracy that you and I know from way back when, but which seems troubled in a lot of ways. But I'm always optimistic.
You know, you're up to the task, and we all have faith in your capacity, even if the lift is heavy. And we have so much faith in your capacity to do this. I think, like so many Pennsylvanians, all of us join in saying how sorry we are that you lost your father, who was a great man, and many of us feel like we lost a neighbor. Even if I think for people who didn't personally know him, who had never met him, I think the sense of it is that we lost a neighbor, in Dick Thornburgh. And I have a good friend, one of my closest friends in all the world, used to work for your dad, and still just speaks the world of him, and he really loved him, your father.
Yeah.
And so the question is I suppose, who was your dad? Who was Dick Thornburgh before politics, before he became famous and revered as a politician, as a governor? Who was he before that?
Well, he was born and raised outside of Pittsburgh, although his mother and father had moved here from Philadelphia, so got both sides of the state covered. He came from a family of engineers, and almost all of them went to Lehigh University. He sort of broke the mold and went to Yale University. He would be the first to admit he wasn't a very good engineering student, and it really wasn't where his passion lie. He went to law school at the University of Pittsburgh, and I think that put him on a track that he pursued. He said, the world, there are too many lawyers out there and not enough good ones.
Yeah.
And I think he found his passion there. And then I think he had a very seminal circumstance early in his married life. He'd gotten married right before he went to law school, in that his wife, my mother, was killed in a car accident. That my two brothers and I were both in the car with her, and we, two of us escaped with just minor injuries, and my third brother was severely injured. My dad was just a couple weeks shy of 28. He was a corporate lawyer, and I think that had a profound influence on him and the trajectory of his career. Made him both turn inward, as that kind of loss would do, and also outward, realizing, I think anyone in that circumstance, we see President Biden having that similar experience.
Very similar story, yeah.
You realize that life is short and that it's more about there's more to life than creature comforts and the surroundings and the trappings of a profession. And I think that put my dad on track towards a life of service, which I think he's my great hero. And I appreciate your words about him, and particularly invoking the "You've Got a Friend in Pennsylvania," which he was enormously proud of, because I think it conveyed something fundamental about this Commonwealth and about the way he saw the world.
Yeah. Well, I loved the way that he was a humble man, and yet there was steel in those veins, you know.
Well, yeah, I had the chance, a great challenge to write a reflection on his death for our family service, and I noted that the great historian, and who was also a friend of his, Doris Kearns Goodwin, said that great leaders are noted by a combination of great confidence and great humility, and I think that described my dad. And the confidence that also had a discipline to it. He was a very disciplined thinker. He was a very disciplined leader. He expected a great deal from the people who worked for him. But also, I think partly because of his own personal loss, had a sense of humility and kindness and appreciation for people that came through. This wasn't all just attention to detail in your job. I think he had an inherent kindness to him that really made for lifelong friends of those with whom he worked.
What was his first political job?
Well, as a young lawyer, he was actually encouraged to run for the mayor of Pittsburgh in the mid-'60s as a Republican. He didn't take the bait on that one, but he did run for Congress in the mid-'60s in 1966 in a very Democratic district in Pittsburgh, and he lost. But as you know, when you go through that, he learned an awful lot. And then subsequently, his first winning race was he ran to be a delegate to the Constitutional Convention in Pennsylvania in 1967, and could tell stories about that. But from that, his career
who would
really
think that
took
somebody
off.
that won the capacity to go to the Constitutional Convention would end up being governor? You know, he nearly ran for mayor, but didn't. Ran for Congress, lost. He's a good guy, accomplished guy. A seat at a delegate at the Constitutional Convention, but that is not like a natural progression to governor. Well,
I think he was also a product of the times. You and I know enough of the late '60s to know the enormous social change and social challenges that we had in front of us. And I remember clearly being with him and my mom when Martin Luther King was shot, when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, going in our backyard and watching the Hill District in Pennsylvania, one of the African American neighborhoods, burning on a bright Sunday morning. So I think that, combined with his own, as I mentioned, personal loss, just got him focused, that said, I need to do something important for the world. And he was fortunate enough and talented enough that those opportunities came to him. And fast forward to 1978, and he was elected in a very tough primary, Republican primary.
Right, because it wasn't assured when he entered the race that he was even going to be the nominee, right?
No, in fact, your viewers may remember a few of the folks that he defeated. One was soon-to-be Senator Arlen Specter. Another was a venerable leader in the state house, Bob Butera, who was the majority leader at the time. So there was a field of 5. He was fortunate in that he was the only candidate from Western Pennsylvania, so he could carry that with him to the primary. And then in the general election, he beat Pittsburgh Mayor Pete Flaherty. And in that case, he actually did very well in Philadelphia and in the suburbs. He won the African-American vote in Philadelphia, which is pretty extraordinary as a Republican.
Yeah.
So that's what put him on the track.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, what a great story. What a great story. My friend Richard Glanton was telling me about that fabulous win back in 1978, and about the tremendous support that your dad had from the African-American community, which is not usual for Republicans.
He was endorsed by Jesse Jackson,
yes.
of all people.
Yeah. I mean, that's tremendous support, to have that kind of support in a gubernatorial election as a Republican.
Well, I should say he earned those votes. He was instrumental in the growth of neighborhood legal services in Pittsburgh in the mid-60s, and really, as a lawyer, felt strongly that anyone, regardless of race, income, socioeconomic status, deserved to be well represented in court. So he was active in that. He was active in the Urban League. So as I said, I think he appreciated that support, but he earned it.
Yeah, I want to read something to you. These are the words that you wrote in tribute to your dad, words that your daughter read at his memorial service. And here's what was written. I hope always to hear my dad's voice whenever I need it most, to be reminded to do the right thing and to do it right. To remember to bend down and talk to the little one or to the person using a chair at their level and on their terms. To show understanding, to share gratitude, and to offer the important small kindnesses that people always remember. As written in his favorite Bible verse, Micah 6:8, Dick Thornburgh did justice, he loved kindness, and now he walks humbly with our God. So why was this your dad's favorite scripture, and how would you describe his inner life, his walk, his relationship with God? I know a lot of people aren't terribly public about their deep faith, but how would you?
No, he wasn't. He was a man of great faith, but it was a private affair. But I think that Micah verse does capture 3 hugely important elements of him. He did love justice. As a lawyer, as a U.S. attorney in Pittsburgh, as Attorney General, as he said, justice means you go where the evidence leads, and you don't always, you're not to be swayed by public opinion. You've got 2 things to pay attention to: the law and the facts. So he loved justice. His sense of kindness, I think, was core to who he was. I mentioned my brother Peter was gravely injured in the auto accident that killed my mother. And Peter has a great intellectual disability, but has led a very full life. And my mom and dad, my mom, Ginny, is a tremendous advocate for people with disabilities. And one of my father's crowning achievements as Attorney General was helping shepherd through the Congress the Americans with Disabilities Act, which George H.W. Bush was so...
I remember it so well. I was at the White House when that happened.
Yeah. So I think, and I mentioned in my words there, he literally, when he was with little ones or with people with disabilities, he would always make a point of stooping down and talking to them eye to eye, which is such an important little gesture that a lot of people forget. And then, the last part of the passage, the sense of humility, again, born of both personal loss and tragedy, and a sense of the need to rise to the tenor and the challenges of the time. So my mom told me that was his favorite verse. My mom gave me the challenge of writing this reflection, which was a daunting challenge.
But wonderfully done.
Once I heard that verse, I thought, this is the way to frame my dad's life, because that really was who he was.
Yeah. Well, isn't that so wonderful and important? I mean, for Christian people, what matters in life is not your station or the level of your education or how much power you have, But what really matters is if you love God as you say you do, that you show it by loving your neighbor like you love yourself. Caring about the people around you like you care about yourself. And what's central to that scripture is that it's that same sense that you love people like you love yourself.
Yeah. And my brothers and I were all raised in the church. We were baptized Episcopalians and raised in the Presbyterian church. And it's always struck me that, those words, just take that Micah verse, they're not that complicated. It's pretty simple.
Right.
Love justice, do kindness, walk with humility.
Right.
But there's great power in those words, and I think I appreciate your ability to encourage others to follow those simple but very powerful words of counsel and advice.
Yeah. Well, I thank you very much. I guess you kind of already touched on some of the work. You talked about the passion that your parents had, of course, for people who are disabled. Along with ADA, were there any other ways that your dad expressed that?
Well, reflect on my mom for a second. My mom really spent her entire career as an advocate for people with disabilities and spent an enormous amount of time working in the faith community to encourage people in religious congregations to be more welcoming to folks with disabilities, which sounds counterintuitive. Aren't they naturally welcoming? Right. And unfortunately not. But she wrote a series of books on the topic. One, the most I think instructive, is called "That All May Worship."
Yeah.
And that was her life's pursuit, is work in. This was across denominations, across faiths, and encouraging all to recognize that there are people in all of our communities with disabilities, whether that's a mental illness, physical issues, emotional, intellectual, what have you, but that they all have a place in the house of worship and a place in our faith.
Yeah. What you're saying is right. It is counterintuitive. You would suspect that if anybody, Christian people or people who self-identify as Christian, would be the ones kind of leading the way, in showing the rest of us how we're supposed to treat people.
Well, and she made a point of trying to break down that challenge and that opportunity into smaller pieces. It's kind of like practicing small acts of kindness, just reaching out to someone or making just a little bit of an accommodation for them to join you in worship, or there's so many ways that people can open doors to, as they would say, to special folks like that.
Yeah. What was your dad's daily routine like, especially when he was in office? Did he have any kind of a special routine? I know you all probably didn't see a lot of him especially when he was governor. You probably didn't see a lot of him, but that being said,
he was very disciplined in his daily life. Up until I believe he was elected governor. When he was U.S. Attorney in Pittsburgh, he used to take the bus to work. So his schedule was dictated by when the bus was leaving.
The bus route.
But I will tell you, and this is back in the old days when the morning newspaper was the way to figure out what happened to your sports teams the night before. We didn't have this 24/7 and the internet and so forth. So he would read the paper religiously to find out what his beloved Pirates or Steelers or Penguins or college teams were up to. A lifelong sports fan.
Yeah, that's great.
Well. Yep.
That's great. Well, what an extraordinary life. David, thank you for sharing memories of your dad with us today. David's been teaching a course on political statesmanship, something that's in short supply today. When we come back, I'll ask him what makes a good statesman. Stay with us.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
We're talking with David Thornburgh. He's the son of late Governor Richard Thornburgh, who left us not too long ago. But what a delight to have him here. Let's turn to David. David, I'm not asking you this blindly because obviously as the president and CEO of the Committee of 70, you probably have a pretty firm understanding of what you believe a statesman is. But give me your definition of what a statesman is, and then I'd like to ask your sense of is there hope going forward for our country given the political environment in which we find ourselves? So what's a statesman to you?
Well, I think a statesman, we have to make the gender non-specific version of that, is someone who's able to rise above the partisan, some often petty back and forth of the political world, to sort of keep their eye on the horizon and to act in ways that benefit all people, and to employ a good judgment and to develop the capacity for learning, and learning that becomes wisdom. And it's a rare commodity, unfortunately. But to your point, I do have hope. I think that the story of this country is, I love the American experiment, the characterization of the growth and development of this country. And there will be, sometimes at a very unexpected time, someone who will rise up above that partisan bickering that I mentioned and display the characteristics that maybe it's once in every few generations, but those folks are out there.
Yeah. Would your dad, if your dad had to do it all over again and he was now in this environment, let's say it was the environment he found himself in 1978 where he's running for governor, could he have won given his makeup in this environment in the year 2021 or 2022?
Well, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that people of talent, confidence, and humility, that there's always a demand for folks like that. A sense of authenticity too. I think my father was an authentic person. There was no charade there. Yeah. I'd like to think that there's always room for those folks, but this is maybe a dry spell, bit of a dry spell. But I'm hopeful that the pendulum will swing back in the other direction. Yeah. You asked me what I thought makes for an effective statesman. There's a sense of, it is confidence and humility. And confidence, by the way, I tell my students this, confidence is something you can build over time. You build confidence by learning something and practicing something.
Right.
It's like playing the piano. You learn the scales over and over again, and all of a sudden you're playing music. And humility, I think, is something that's harder to acquire. It's a function of how you're raised, of your faith, how you are taught to relate to others. But in that case, I think you're heavily influenced by your mentors, your teachers, and you want to put yourself in a position where you're around people of humility, confidence, and judgment, and almost by osmosis, I think that's how you acquire it.
I think it's so important. I mean, humility is such an important ingredient for people who aspire to serve, and yet and still it's not an ingredient that's prized. I haven't seen candidates running commercials saying, I'm vote for me, I'm a humble person. For the most part, we did a show, an episode on State of Independence on gentleness. And the importance and the beauty of being a gentle person. And I asked the question, do you consider yourself a gentle man or a gentle woman, so to speak? And do you prize that virtue, the virtue of being gentle? And frankly, few people today people like to be described as hard charging, hard nosed, tough.
I will only, as a native Pittsburgher, I would only say Fred Rogers to you.
Yeah.
And that's who you want to be. When you are long gone from this earth, you want to be remembered. People say that people won't remember what you say, they'll remember how you say it. You will always remember what Fred Rogers, how Fred Rogers talked to children and talked to other people. So kindness and humility endure.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I couldn't have said any better. Thank you, David. And thanks to your mom and dad for sharing your entire family with 12.5 million Pennsylvanians. You served as a family, and those sacrifices are appreciated and valued. If you have a moment, I'd love to hear your personal memories of Governor Thornburgh or other men and women who define statesmanship for you. Drop them in a comment box to me at joewatkins.net. And stay with us. We'll be right back.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
And now let's talk to our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
Joe, this was a great show.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of reasons, but one is because what we've tried to do on this program is find examples of people who defy the moment and ask the question like you did, do you think they would work in this environment? I think Dick Thornburgh would hold up. For the 2 or 3 times that I did get to meet Governor Thornburgh, you know who the legend is, and the question is he going to be the same as the reputation? Now, nobody's perfect, but he held up. And all of those personal kindnesses and the niceties and all that wasn't just good breeding. It was that he actually looked you in the eye and cared about you. Now, there are many other politicians you and I know who have this great ability to work the room, but look right past you.
Right, to the next person, right?
Yes, and you and I just have a few names that come to mind thinking, they look right through you, they didn't listen to a word that I said, and then they wonder why they lose an election. But that's a fundamental character issue, I think, about how you treat people who are vulnerable, who are not able to offer you anything back.
Yeah, I wonder if some of the pain that he went through of losing his wife early on in that tragic accident, if that shaped him. I know it did.
Yeah.
I think it just made him the wonderfully compassionate, thoughtful person that he became. If he wasn't before that happened, but certainly after it happened, the public person was every bit of that warm, engaging, caring person.
Well, we do wonder, we always ask the big questions of, is there purpose in suffering? Is there purpose in death? Is there purpose in, all of the hard things that happen? And if there isn't, then a life is wasted. And you think, well, no, there is real purpose, because the orbit around that loved one who is gone is huge, and the implications go through far beyond the span of their life, and that tragedy. I mean, even we talked earlier about President Biden. We know that presidents and public figures have private lives. Getting to know how they arrived at their public life, I think, is pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is great. Well. If you're an American citizen or maybe preparing to become one, I hope you remember that the founders left this great experiment of liberty in your hands and mine. Let's pray for a new generation of statesmen to fill the shoes of the generation that's passing away. I do pray today's program encourages you in your daily mission to love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. That's what this program is all about. Thanks in advance for dropping me a quick message in the comment box at joewatkins.org. It means a lot to me and our guests to know how this program is helping and encouraging you. From America's first capital, Philadelphia, I'm Joe Watkins. Thanks so much for watching. I love the quote about Mr. Rogers, about Fred Rogers, and because Fred Rogers was the epitome of a Christian.
Yeah.
Joe Watkins' State of Independence is a production of Lighthouse TV, positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.